Right, here I am on my Mac desktop. I'm just going to switch straight across to the Windows desktop using Parallels again, and I'll start the iEFIS simulator program, which also happens to be the screen designer program. And there you see it starting up on my page 5 is my nominated startup page. And this is predominantly a checklist page. So what I can do on this page is cycle through all my on-ground checklists from pre-flight through to engine shutdown. Also around the sides I have some other information. Across the top is a fairly standard top bar that I have with com radio transponder settings. The weight and balance icon is there so that pre-flight I can do a quick weight and balance if I need to. And then on the left hand side, that would normally be the area reserved for my engine instruments on my other screens. But in this case I just decided to put some stopwatches and timers there, and also down the bottom left, probably the most important bit for the checklist pages is the two buttons, page up and page down. And these are linked to all the info pages on which the checklists are contained. And this is how it works. Now these two page up and page down buttons, if I touch those buttons, the pages will move through the different pages which I have the checklists on. So page down, you can see it moving through the checklists in order. Through the start, engine run up, before takeoff, then I skip to after landing, and then engine shutdown. And of course if I touch page up, they simply go the other direction. So I can do page up, page down as required to cycle through to whichever checklist I need at the time. Now each of these checklist pages is actually an info module. So for example, pre-flight, the first one is info module A. The next one for engine start is info module B. The next one is C, and so on. There's 6 of them altogether for 6 checklist pages that I've created. And the buttons simply are allocated to a touch area which cycles through one info module at a time. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my page 1, which is my main flight display for VFR flight, and I'm going to put a construction rectangle, which is a type of drawing primitive, around the moving map area, and I'm going to cut that or copy paste it onto my new screen, and that'll also copy the properties such as the position and size of the rectangle, and this is where I'm going to put my checklist pages. So we'll start by going into design mode. I'm going to edit the flight module. This is where my moving map is contained. And I'm going to add 2 drawing primitives. I want one for the moving map area, and I want one for the top bar. So I'll just append them down to the bottom, and then I go to those drawing primitives one at a time and edit the properties to get the size and position of the construction rectangle matching the area that I want to cover. So I'll just fast forward through that, and at the end we'll have these 2 construction rectangles copied, and I can paste them into my new blank screen to show me where I need to put things. Now you don't need to use a construction rectangle. You could even use an ordinary rectangle, and then once you've got the size and position right, just simply cut it. This will cut it to your clipboard, and then paste it into your new screen, and then once you've finished with the new screen, just simply delete it at the end. So now we've done those, I'm going to copy those 2 drawing primitives, those 2 construction rectangles. In fact, I'm just going to cut them, and they're now on the clipboard. I can close out of this screen. I can do whatever I like without exiting the whole Screen Designer program, and they'll still be on the clipboard, and I can paste them into a new one so that I can position my checklist pages where I want them. So the question is, why would I want to go to all this trouble to do checklist pages when the MGL iEFIS has its own built-in checklist function? Well, the answer is fairly simple. The built-in MGL checklist function is quite fine. It works perfectly well. However, it's just simple monochrome blocks of text. So if you just have fairly simple checklists and all they are simple lines, then the MGL checklist function would work fine. However, if we use the power of the built-in screens and the screen designer, we can actually do things like put real-time information on those checklist pages, such as volts, pressures, temperatures, and so on. Now I want to create a new blank page. So I have 5 pages already, and I want to do this on page 6. I'm going to go back into the File Manager this time, into the Screens folder, and you can see I already have my Flight 1 through to Flight 5, which are my 5 pages. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to select any one of those, it doesn't matter, and I'm going to copy it and paste it back into the same folder. So I'm just selecting Flight 1. I've copied it, and now I just paste it back into the same folder, and it pastes as a copy. All I need to do now is to rename this to Flight 6, and that will make the iEFIS think that there is now a new page 6. Remember, we must have a flight module corresponding to that page, otherwise nothing will display on the iEFIS. Now I'm going to get back out of this and go to my new page 6 that I've created. It's got all that stuff on it that I copied. I don't want that. I want to clear all that off, so we'll go in to design mode, and what I'm going to do is just simply delete it all. So there's design mode. I have to select the module, which is the flight module, the one we just copied. And there's all the stuff that was copied across. Select it all. We can right click and select delete. And all of that stuff's deleted, and now we're just left with a blank flight module. I'm just going to paste those construction rectangles. Remember, they're still on the clipboard, so I'm going to paste those in so I know where I need to position things. I'm not actually going to put anything on the flight module in this video, but you can see there that those spaces are clearly marked out. So if you want to put anything into your flight module, which will be there irrespective of which info page you've selected, then you can do that on that flight module page. Now let's start on our blank page, and we'll put some items in. We go back into design mode, and for the module, now we want to create our info module. So it selects module A by default. That'll be the one that is displayed when you rotate the rotary dial and select that page. Module A will be displayed along with any other modules you have on that page, and it gives us a blank module. And I'm now going to paste that construction rectangle in. While you weren't looking, I deleted the top one. I decided we probably didn't need that. The main one will be sufficient, and that tells me where I've decided to have my checklist information. The first thing we're going to do is put the control buttons here. So they're going to be touch areas, and remember, the big thing about info pages is we can link a touch area to them. It's under the General tab. You can see it says touch area, and I'm going to add that in. I'm going to select it so that I can edit its properties, and we'll start moving that about the page. You can see down here it says info area page plus, and info area page minus is another option. that simply determines which direction it cycles through the info pages on that screen. So I'm going to leave it at info area page plus. That means it'll go from A, B, C, D, and so on. I'm going to move this touch area to where I want it. Let's just say we want it near the top left here. Remember we had that blank space over on the left hand side. So I'm going to allocate that to the touch area to control these info pages. Now I want something on the touch area like a button or some words or something, so I know where the touch area is. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a nice sort of, probably I think a rounded rectangle. You can have whatever you like. Whatever is eye-pleasing to you, that is what you can put there. And I'm going to do a rounded rectangle, not going to have a fill in it. And I'll reposition it and resize it so that it sits on top of the touch area. I'm going to make it slightly smaller than the touch area. That way if I happen to touch with my fingers just outside that button, it'll still activate the function of moving the info pages forward or backward. I'm just going to change the corner radius a little bit. I might make the border a bit thicker. And once I'm happy with that, I'll just unselect it so that I can see what it looks like, and I'm pretty happy with that. There's our button sitting on top of our touch area. Now I just want to give it a label. So I'm going to select Text Universal, or Unitext as it's called, and just type in what I want to call it. So let's start with the word page. I'll change the font to Arial, which is my preferred font for most things. Believe it or not, there is actually some science that was done by NASA that Arial text is easier to read for things like checklists and so on. And I'm going to put another word underneath it. What I'm doing is cheating here. I just copied the page text and then pasted that in underneath it, and then all I have to do is change the letters. So I'm going to put page forward here and just arrange it so that it's centered in that button and it looks eye-pleasing to me. In fact, you know what? I'm just changed my mind, and I think I want to call that button Next Page. So I'll change that text and I'll swap them around. I'll go to the other one and I'll move that down so it says Next Page. And just to neaten it up here in the list of items, I'm just going to move the bottom one up so that they're in the correct order, reflecting what is actually on the screen. So there's Unitext Next and Unitext Page. Let's actually do the checklist itself now. I want a white background page for my checklist, and I want black text on that. So let's just go to the General tab, and go to Drawing Primitives. We'll add the drawing primitives in. It's always that default diagonal line, and we will change that to a solid rectangle. So there we go, a filled rectangle with rounded corners. Now I just need to reposition that, and I want my checklist page to fill that whole area that I've set aside for checklists. So I'm going to, once I've got the top left corner correct, I'm going to change the fill color to white. That gives me my white page. And now I'm going to enlarge it to fill that entire area. Be careful down at the bottom edge and the right hand edge of your screen when you're designing something. You will find that if you put it too close to the bottom edge or the right hand edge, when you transfer it to the real iEFIS, you may actually obscure part of what you've put on the screen with the buttons on the right hand side and the labels along that bottom edge there. So I've got it about the size I want. I'll unselect it just to check, and that looks fairly good to me. I've just got a very small margin on the bottom and the right hand edges there, which is what I wanted. And now I can start placing some text items in. Now all this is simply a matter of adding universal text for your title, for your lines, and however you want to arrange it. You can just put these things in step by step until you've got your full checklist that you want on that particular page. Don't forget to change the text color. If you're going to have a black on a white background, change the text foreground color to black. Now the reason I do black on white for this, again, there is actually some science out there, believe it or not, and it's also by NASA, that the easiest text to read is black on white text. Black text on a white background, or at least a very light background. How I know all this? Well, when I was flying in the military in a past life and pushing paper behind a desk, one of my jobs was actually checklist and procedure design. So I'll just speed this up a little bit, and you'll see me put a line in, and then we'll go to the next step of putting in some dynamic data. Now I've got master switch on check vaults, but it'd be nice to know what the vaults are without having to swap between pages. We can do that with a text special item. So I'll insert that. Let's go to the properties editor, and we'll move it around a bit. We need to make the foreground color black. We see a 0 there. And now I need to select what I want. I want volts, of course, because that's what that checklist item is. So I'm going to scroll down and find the supply voltage. And there it says 13.8. I'm going to put it in the same font and size as its corresponding checklist line, then move it across and back up. So now I have the voltage reading right next to the checklist line. Now I'm going to put a V there for the units. Again, that's just universal text for volts. For other units, you can use the units text, but not for volts. So again, I'm going to make the font style and size consistent, and then move it across so that it sits in the position I want. Just going to give it a little bit more space there. I'm happy with that. So there I've got my 13.8 volts indicating. Now the other thing I would like to do is I want to put an alarm field there, and because if it's in the green, I would like to have a green field in the background, and if it's out of limits, I'd like to have a yellow or a red field as applicable. So I can do this using the alarm field, and that is under the status control tab. So you see here I've put an alarm field in, a green one there, and I'm going to adjust the width and the height. I'm actually going to have it just so that it covers the 13.8. Now I don't actually want it covering the 13.8, it's sitting on top of it at the moment and I don't want that, but we'll fix that in a second. So I'm just going to make sure that I have the field linked to the right data output. So I'm going to select the main voltage. I don't want that alarm field changing colour if it's linked to the oil pressure. So we'll link it to the correct field there, to the voltage. Now it is sitting on top of that text. Why is that? It's because of the order that I have put these items in. See, it's at the bottom, so it's the last thing that the screen paints or draws. So I'm going to move it up so that it's above the voltage, and now it's slipped behind it and the voltage is in front, and that's because it draws things on the screen in this order. So it first draws the alarm field, then the voltage reading, and then the units, which doesn't really matter because it's not obscured anyway. And now it all appears to be in the correct order and displaying correctly. I'm just going to adjust that height slightly of the field there. I'm pretty happy with that, how that looks. And that's how you put one of those items in. So you'll just repeat that process for all the lines you want, any instruments or readings you want to put in there, and you'll have a whole checklist page. Next up, we're going to do Info Module B on this page. So it'll be Info 6B. And before we do that, I need to copy some things and have them on the clipboard so that I can paste them onto Info 6B, the blank page that starts up. I want the button first of all, and the touch area. If I don't have that touch area pasted across to Info 6B and I do my checklist design and so on, when I actually put it into the iEFIS and I use those pages and I press next page, it'll go to the next page, but there won't be a touch area there. That means I'll be stuck on that page and I won't be able to get out of it. Ask me how I know all about that. So the other thing I want to copy is the background as well, because I want that consistent across the pages. So I think the easiest thing here is probably going to just be to copy all of that page. Then I get the button, the touch area, I get the background, and I get everything in the exact same position, because whenever you copy something, it copies the properties, including the size and position of that as well. So now I go to Design Info Module B. I continue, and it comes up with a blank Info 6B. Now paste all of that stuff in that I copied off the previous one of Info 6A. And now I have a second checklist page. It's got the button, it's got the touch area, so I know that I'll be able to cycle through those pages, and I can, it's obviously going to be a different checklist, so I can change the name here. It'll be in the same position as the previous page. I may have to change it a little bit given that I'm changing the text name, so I'm just going to move it a bit to center it more. And I can go to the checklist line and I can edit that or delete parts of it and put a new line in there. So let's put a new checklist line in. I'll delete that one except for the number. And let's just make something up here. Let's just say ATIS received. Seems like a fair thing to do before taxi. And I don't need voltage there anymore, so I'm going to delete that. That was from our previous page, from before start. And so on, and you get the idea. And so we can just numerically go down, position subsequent checklist lines on the page, and we have our page 2. Now let's see what the end result of this is. We'll exit the screen designer, and we hit next page here, press next page, and we see we go and cycle between the checklists. Each time that is just moving forward an info page, and of course when you get to the last info page on that screen, it just cycles through to the first one. Now let's have a look at one of my other pages here where I put info pages to use. This is my expanded engine display, which is page 4, and it consists of 3 types of modules. Remember, in the iEFIS the modules are all overlaid on top of each other. The first one is the flight module. We must always have a flight module present, otherwise the iEFIS doesn't recognise that page exists. The second one is the engine module, where most of the instruments here are displayed, and there's the engine module there without the flight module at the top, so it's the engine module alone. And the third type is the info module, and this is info 4A. So it's a blank page except for the little button which has the info on it and a touch area assigned to it to cycle through the 2 info modules. And this one is info 4B. So by pressing the info button, which has the touch area assigned to it, we can simply cycle continuously through info pages A and B. Now you might be wondering, if all of the modules on a given screen, the flight, engine, fuel, which we don't have in this case, and info, overlay on top of each other, how is it that the engine instruments aren't appearing here somewhere? Well, I'll show you how to do that. They're basically there still, but they're hidden behind this background. So if we go into the design mode, and I'm going to select the info module. I know this is 4B, so I'm going to select module B. There are all my items that I've put on here. You can see there's the touch area up there. There's some drawing primitives such as the frame around the touch area. And most importantly here, one of these drawing primitives is actually the white background. So if I click on the properties there, you can see here that the frame and fill color are both solid white, and it's a filled rectangle, which is the important bit. The other really important bit is that it's drawn in the foreground. By drawing it in the foreground, this will overlay the engine instruments behind it. That's how we get a plain white background on which we can put various other pieces of text. So here's the end result. By clicking on the info button, we cycle between info pages A and B, and that effectively makes page B, which is where we put all our text and data, appear and disappear. And that's how it's done.